Hello everyone, nice to speak with you. I thought that I would discuss astrological aspects because I think that that's probably really confusing for the layman, and I try to keep it layman friendly in all of my public content. But that's an excellent question, and let me make the distinction that we have aspects, relationships that planets are making to one another as they transit around the ecliptic. A 360-degree wheel is the astrological plane that we're working with. Each sign contains 30 degrees. So this is actually measured and pumped out through something called an ephemeris that NASA generates every century. So this is measurable. The movements of the planets in our solar system in respect to the sun. The sun is the magnetizing, cohesive force for the solar system that we live in, and all of the planets. And we're always moving. So here's the sun moving, and all of the planets are moving around with it, you see. So, and they move along an ecliptic in different degrees in each constellation, which represents astrological signs. So I've posted a picture below. I'm going to be talking about the main aspects. There are tons of aspects, quincunxes, semi-sextiles, semi-squares. We're not going to get into what is called all of the minor aspects, because one thing about astrology, it is such an intellectually rich and deep and expansive area to study. That's why most people never get bored, because you keep going deeper and deeper. You learn the mechanics and the mathematics of it, and then what comes with time is the interpretive ability to see everything as a whole. But the mathematical aspects are based on geometry, and this is the premise that everything in our solar system is made up of geometric shapes and forms. And science is coming in to prove this to be true. So, and every planet in the solar system has a certain vibration that we react to unconsciously. Astrology, in its highest form, seeks to make the unconscious conscious, because that's what creates free will. That's what creates manifestation and that co-creating principle. And I'm going to get real deep with you for a minute and talk about when I was meditating about 2 years ago. My team, I work with a team that came in and said, we want to talk to you about binary star systems. And they were tying this to literally dimensional energy. And so I'm like, okay. I researched it a little bit, and then I came across this wonderful interview with a man called Laird Scranton. And he had done a lot of work and research with the Dogon tribe. This is a tribe that predates ancient Egypt, and they were literally the holders of quantum physics information. And they were talking about the Sirius star system and the binary star system. What that means is every star has a sister or a twin. And that this speaks to these different dimensions of energy. Third dimension, this planet is heavy dimension. It's heavy. Fear, corruption, slavery with finances, all the heavy, dark stuff, beauty, creativity. But the premise scientifically is that we've got another vibrational Earth that we can't see. because it's vibrating in a different rate. And it's not out there. It can be right here, vibrating, so our eyes can't see it. You connect with it through raising your own vibrational energy and access different realities and different experiences. Wow. So I was stunned when they were feeding me this information, and usually within 6 months after they feed it to me, I stumble across the piece that really lays it out. So I just trust them to go take me forth with the curriculum, because they know I've been an energy researcher. I was studying about brains and string theory, and binary star system kind of intermeshes with string theory, which is saying that there are many realities right next to each other. You know, it's not an out there. It may be just a 0.5 millimeter away from what your conscious mind is connecting with. So, okay, so that being said, I wanted to just tie in the dimensional qualities of how I, in my opinion and my research, finds that third, fifth dimensional connection and energy works. And third dimension is where everything is judgmental, black and white, fear-based, and control-based. That's third dimension that we often are learning from our parents, doing the best they can, trying to educate their children through our school systems, through our media. Whereas that fifth dimension, I could argue, is the twin star system to the Earth's system, and it's a whole different vibrational reality. It's just different. And what I've been finding with is the clients that I've been working with the past, I'd say especially the past 5 years, they're getting this. So you don't even have to know the science behind it. They're understanding that the more conscious we work with our history, imprints, our past lives, our karma, if you will, that through that awareness and consciousness, you can then move into much more of this co-creative energy. So I feel that that's foundational to what we're talking about here. And when you're hearing astrologers talk about the sun signs, which is the best we can do, and this is, there's a lot of comments over on my YouTube page, and I have to really stop and think about it, because it's like, well, that doesn't match my chart. You know, what you're saying, my first house starts at 7 degrees of Aries, not 0 degrees, which is the unequal house system, and it's hard to explain that. I can't see all of the thousands of people's charts who follow and watch me, and that's why your birth date, birth time, where you were born, longitude, latitude, is your own footprint, your own very unique, highly specific footprint that no astrologer can read unless they have your birth data. So I was trying to kind of back up, because you get to doing this thing for so long that to move back into these fresh new eyes can be kind of challenging. And so I found myself trying to really back into like just coming upon this and what the heck does this mean? That doesn't fit my chart, and I am kind of following my chart, but when we're talking about when we're talking about transits, it's the planets that are transiting one another. So these are transits. It's not the transits to your chart. That's what we talk about in personal sessions. We've got the general influences that people will play out depending upon their level of consciousness. The heavy, predictive, this will happen to you kind of work that some astrologers do is for the unconscious. This is, you're just here and life is happening to you. So sit back and hold on to your seat and get your seatbelt on. And it's kind of depressing. The other, which more people are melding into, is the understanding that as we're moving through this great awakening on the planet, that people can consciously work with both the general transits in the sky as well as their own transits in their chart. So I just wanted to make that distinction. So when we talk about conjunction, astrology is a wheel. It's a 360-degree wheel. It's like a big clock. One of the biggest uses of astrology is for the timing of things. And especially for people who are going through some strong periods of growth, which often means pain and challenge, it's helpful to know how long this will last. So, but conjunction is when, as you can see, it's a 0 degree. It's like when a planet is conjuncting another planet. They're on top of each other. They're at the same degree point. And this happens in your own chart too. Pluto's transiting, and then it conjuncts your moon, and all of these things start happening with your mom and your family and your house. But it is a powerful astrological aspect, full of energy, full of emphasis, and it's just kind of happening depending on the planets involved in this conjunction, where they're right on top of each other at the same degree point in the sky. And depending on how conscious you are, Pluto transits can take some time to get a handle with, because Pluto deals with subconscious material, and subconscious mind runs 90+% of our decisions, our preferences, our fears, our anxieties. So Pluto can take a while to get a handle on and really work with in a more conscious way as the subconscious material is bubbling up. So conjunctions, and then you have 12 signs in 3 different categories. You've got the cardinal signs, which is Libra, Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn. You've got the fixed signs, which is Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus. And then you've got the mutable signs, which is Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Gemini. And where aspects occur, the mutables have an easier time flowing with things. And the cardinal signs are like, I have to do something about this and get a handle on this. And the fixed signs try and deny that there's anything going on at all. Fixed signs don't really like change thrust upon them. So wherever the conjunction is happening is a very direct effect on your subconscious mind, and part of the growth involved with that is bringing it up into conscious awareness. Then we talk about sextiles, and that is when transits or planets are connecting with one another from one sign, they skip a sign, and it's connecting in the other sign. And that's a 60 degree. And sextiles are always about opportunity and the needing to be aware of them in order to really use them. People may not be aware that there's an opportunity here as we're doing our life, and that's where it's so helpful to plug into transits, because it's like, Jupiter's going to be sextiling my Mercury. That's going to be an opportunity potentially for travel, for teaching, for classes, for positive exchanges with siblings, for relatives. There can be opportunity through foreigners or unfamiliar people and experiences, where you're aware of a level of increased optimism and mental growth that is really showing up. But if you're unaware of it and don't see the positive potentials around you, you can just pass that by. So sextiles are always about being aware of an opportunity. You have to be conscious of them in order for them to be beneficial. And then we get to squares, and squares are real soul work, in my opinion. We are being challenged, we are being stretched. There is usually anger, frustration, impatience, maybe feeling rejected in some capacity. And squares are, they skip signs. So there's a square, it skips 2 signs, and then it's hitting another planet in the 3rd house away. And squares are about challenge. Squares are really tied into our growth, too, because we're being tested. It's lessons. One take on this is it's lessons that we failed to learn in past cycles of reincarnation, and they're showing up in this lifetime so we can master them. Squares are often felt as obstacles, as pressure, as a test of your patience, a need to adjust. And a good example is we've had Mars in square to Uranus going back to mid-May of 2018. We just had it's exact 3 times. The last one, it was in August, and then another one, an exact in mid-September. So it's just separating. With squares, you give that like a 8-degree orb. So in essence, we've all been under this influence of Mars square Uranus. And what made that even more challenging is Mars was retrograde through much of that energy. So we didn't have the energy, the humph, the wherewithal to do much about it. It's kind of a falling back of a little bit of defeat or the need to be patient with it. And Mars-Uranus can be very explosive, where we're tired of being tied into something. We want freedom, we want newness, we want change. We want development in our lives wherever the Mars-Uranus square was taking place. So it was a very trying time for a lot of people through these summer months. And then the feeling of lack of confidence, lack of energy, lack of focus to bring about change. So we're still separating from that square aspect because Mars is still within 8 degrees of Uranus, and we'll be finishing off with that as we get past September of 2018. But squares are testing. People, well, I'll get to that later. When we're undergoing squares in our own chart, we understand that we're going through, especially Pluto squares, Saturn squares, testing our reality, testing our sense of responsibility, testing someone else's trying to keep us responsible or keep a hold on us. And that's where there's tension. And it's usually, when we get a break from it or it passes, that we really get a handle on what that meant. With Saturn squares, it's often a case of you just got to knuckle down and do the work. There are things that you've got to get done. You're tired, you're resenting it. It feels like a tough haul. But Saturn squares tend to last, they hit 3 times over one planet, but for like 2 weeks, and then you kind of get a break, and then it's 4 months down the road and it comes back in, so you get breathing time between that. But squares are very much about pressure and tests. People who have a lot of squares in their chart have come here to really learn and grow and evolve, or not. If they don't work through the natal squares in their chart, it's okay. You've got another cycle and maybe another cycle, so there's no judgment with that. And that's one piece in a whole body of vibrational energy that I'm talking about. So squares are always a challenge to learn something, to move beyond our comfort level. Sometimes squares are about being patient because we're so programmed to think that everything should progress in linear time. And it's just not true. I subscribe to the spiral model of time. So, you're not moving something forward, or you have to wait for the form of something or for dynamics to develop. The timing's not right, or you have to work through some things. And then it can come up around again on another layer of the spiral where you're working with that square again very differently. And I see this with Saturn Pluto, Neptune squares. The first time we deal with an outer planet square to our personal planets, it's disorienting. And then we start to kind of adjust and sense the meaning of this passage, because again, these outer planets will square our personal planets 3 times. 3 again. 3. 3 is a very spiritual number. So it gives us that time to adjust to this new lesson, engagement, growth cycle that is timed perfectly in our chart with the squares coming in. With the general astrology, this is collective challenge and tests. Then we get to trines. And trines, as you can see, are triangular in nature. Tri, 3. And again, the affinity with 3. Trines are benefits without effort. Trines are gifts. It's good being returned to you from past cycles. Where I see trines in a chart is where that part of their life just is easy and it flows. When we're talking about trines in the general astrology, we can look for themes that are flowing, that aren't going to stress us, that won't test us. And by being aware of that, we can magnetize and expand that experience and that vibration. So again, it's through awareness, but where there's gifts are being bestowed. For example, when I see a sun-moon trine in a chart, I'm like, that's a gift. This person is congruent. And they may have all of these squares and all of these tense aspects that they signed up for in this life. But beneath that is a very stable foundation, because the sun is consciousness, the moon is being able to work with your emotions, being aware of your emotions, controlling emotions, directing emotions. So whenever I see trines with the sun and moon especially, I'm looking at a cohesive being. When we have sun-moon squares in our chart, this is a lifetime of learning about our conscious awareness and the controlling of our emotions, being aware of other people's emotions. So we're learning about emotional, intelligent themes in this lifetime. So trines are just gifts. I just say thank you. Thank you. And be aware of them. When they're running for us collectively and in your own chart, you know it's an opportune time to act upon something, to expand upon something, that good luck is with you. Trine is the quintessential good luck aspect because it's stable. You see, it's not going to tip over. It tips over, it's stable again. Tips over, it's stable again. So there's no way you can deconstruct this energy flow that is running in the population and or in your own chart. Trines are gifts, and you don't have to really act upon them. Like sextiles are an opportunity, but if you don't open that door, the sextile passes you by. Trines are like, this is just flowing for you. Someone's going to call you up and ask you to take that trip to Tanzania or publish this or show something in a gallery. That's trine information. And then the final aspect, major aspect, is the opposition. And that's why emotions and planet Earth is so rich too, because an opposition is like an Aries to Libra, Capricorn to Cancer. And I'll assert that the rising sign and your 7th house is all about the spiritual growth in this lifetime, because it's the opposite. But here's the deal. In Aries, under pressure, in dealing with someone else, the Aries comes out in the Libra. So the Libra's like, we're going to get along, goddammit. That's the human blowtorch that Libra can carry as she's grounding with Aries, or she's seeing there's injustice or unfairness. And, you know, that's the same with, and, you know, Gemini ascendant is about dealing with duality. And then, you know, in that 7th house of Sagittarius, it can be the know-it-all or the philosopher. So we carry aspects of both of the sign quality in our ascendant and descendant. That's the opposition. the spiritual opposition. Oppositions in transit are about awareness and cooperation and learning compromise. Oppositions are usually internal and external conflict caused by others, circumstances, or situations that come about in order to bring change and growth to you. So Saturn oppositions are often quite external, but the trick is, okay, someone's coming at me in a very aggressive, confrontational way that is not helpful nor reasonable. Am I going to rise up and hit back at that? Because when we send energy out, we've got to expect it to come back to us. This is the opposition. Or am I going to be aware that I'm going to go and tend to this over here? Is there some vibration or energy or karmic theme that is playing out that keeps bringing up these aggressive, controlling types in my life? And just through being conscious of that, again, consciousness, and tending to that internally in my own vibrational history and past lives even, then I'm going to be much more aware of that coming before it keeps going or manifesting in some way. So oppositions are about awareness, usually brought to you from external situations, people, and factors. Oppositions can be positive. You know, the Sun-Jupiter opposition, say Jupiter's opposing your Sun. This may be a bright and sunny person who is really mirroring for you positive qualities that you're not acknowledging and owning within yourself. A Jupiter opposition Sun can also be a narcissistic energy where you're really being taught to hold your boundaries and not get sucked in to their self-aggrandizement needs. So there's a lot of different ways depending, again, on the planets and the signs with the opposition. And most of these have an 8-degree orb. We call them applying transits or aspects, and waning aspects or transits. They tend to be stronger as they're coming in, and as they start to move away, the understanding, because you're not in the heat of that energy exchange, can really deepen for you. All right, so great speaking with you, and I'll talk with you again soon. Have a great week.